Justified in questions, justified in getting answers. Matt Palumbo and Booker Scott are justified. This is the PB&J podcast.
The American delegation in Switzerland has made their way back home to the United States of America as they've been wrangling with Iran over the weekend. We also have Major League Baseball that has backtracked a little bit. DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, on her last day released information about the COVID origins. Will it matter? Does it even matter? I'm Booker, and this is the PB&J podcast alongside Matt Palumbo. Together we are Palumbo, Booker, Justified. Thanks for being here tonight, and Matt, welcome back into the program.
It's good to be here. Thanks to a tech error we don't understand, I'm in the host seat, but I'm not actually the host, but I like that I look like one.
Well, you would be a great host, I think.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. Well,
one episode.
We have a busy night here to get into this information. We have Iran going on. We had J.D. Vance there, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. They went to Switzerland to Lake Lucerne, and over the weekend, it wasn't going to happen. It was going to happen. It seems like the same thing that we've been watching for the last 3 months now when it comes to Iran. However, it appears that maybe they made some headway. I'm not sure.
Let's hope so. I mean, so far we just have a memorandum of understanding. Trump has talked about a deal, but has not shared the details yet. So that leaves the question of why exactly that is. Maybe he just doesn't want to solicit any foreign commentary onto it. Who really knows? But from the memorandum of understanding, there's 2 points that have been drawing Trump some blowback from his own supporters. The first one being that the Strait of Hormuz is toll-free for 60 days. After that, Iran can put tolls on ships passing through. That being said, Trump has countered that the U.S. will get a share of those tolls. So Iran would be getting new revenue from that, but so would we if that is to be believed. And the other one is, I'm drawing a blank. The $300 billion reconstruction fund, where I don't even know how it did $300 billion worth of damage, but I guess that's what they're going to quote people at. But Trump says that we're not going to be contributing towards it. We're just going to be organizing it and getting it.
Yeah, getting it from other countries.
So that is his response to those 2 major objections. And we have to remember, too, I think Trump thought, and we certainly hoped that this would be sort of a one-off strike. Obviously, Trump had a lot of success fighting Iran just about a year ago in a one-off attack. And as we recall, the usual suspects were saying it's going to be a World War III, or we're going to get drawn into a prolonged crisis. This time around, thank God it's not World War III, but it has gone on quite a lot longer than we thought. And it's not going to be a perfect deal, but it is going to be a deal that at least allows this to end. And hopefully we get something out of it.
And is it going to be better than the JCPOA, the one that Obama did, which was sunsetting in October of 2025, so it wouldn't even exist anymore? Trump took us out of that beforehand. Is it going to be better than that? And I think that's where the rubber's going to meet the road eventually, because as they continue to negotiate, Trump has clearly said no nuclear weapons or no enrichment of uranium. That's where his line in the sand is. In Iran has said, we're not going to give up that right. So as of right now, it seems like they're dangling little carrots. America is, and Iran is playing along as we move along in these 60 days. And meanwhile, you have a problem still in Lebanon with Hezbollah and Israel that is continuing to go on. And I want to talk about that just a little bit as we go through this hour. But overall, I just don't know what the American people can expect. At least right now, we have $73, $75 a barrel oil, which is going to help at the gas station. It already has lowered the gas prices. So that's a good thing. I just don't know where this is all going. It seems to me that the Arab nations have formed an alliance that will be good for America in the long run. I don't know, Matt. Where are your thoughts on that?
Well, the thing too is, there was a report from the Washington Post, and to be fair, it's the Washington Post, first of all. Second of all, it was citing, quote unquote intelligence sources without saying exactly who the sources were. So obviously a grain of salt in what I'm about to quote, but they were saying that Israel might try to disrupt the deal. And it kind of makes sense from their perspective in that, well, they want they obviously want to destroy Hezbollah, but it does seem that they do want to occupy parts of southern Lebanon. That probably is maybe a more controversial statement, but I think there are members of his cabinet that have indicated as much. People like Ben-Gvir, who is, I think, probably one of the more extreme, outspoken members of his cabinet, was talking about for every Israeli mother that loses a child, we need to kill 1,000 Lebanese. Listen, I understand the politics of deterrence, but that seems a little bit extreme. But as elections in Israel are coming up in October, and the war in Iran has not been popular in America. This deal is not very popular, and some Republicans have spoken out against it. But in Israel, the war actually is net popular, and the overwhelming majority, a sizable majority, a double-digit majority, do want the fighting in Lebanon to continue. So if you are Benjamin Netanyahu, you're facing corruption charges, you want to hold on to power, and the number I saw was, I think, 86% oppose the deal Trump is making. Well, from their perspective, it does make perfect sense to try to disrupt the deal, influence it in some way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Good take on that, Matt. Let's go to Vice President J.D. Vance and his comments after the meeting at Lucerne Lake in Switzerland.
Well, again, I feel great about the progress that we made over the last couple of days. We're looking forward to going back home. It's been a very long day. I know the reporters had a long day as well, so I appreciate you guys. But look, the fundamental thing we got is, number one, we set up the mechanism to ensure not only the Straits of Hormuz are open, but will stay open. We think about 15 million barrels of oil come out. That's one of the reasons why oil is so low right now. Obviously, that means lower gas prices, and gas prices are going to keep coming down. Number two, we actually set up the right mechanism to ensure the regional ceasefire to manage the inevitable conflicts that will come up. We feel great about that. We're working with our allies, from the Israelis to the Gulf Arabs, to make sure that sticks, and we feel very, very good about where that is. We have the Iranians allowing weapons inspectors, nuclear inspectors into their country for the first time in a long time. We're obviously going to bolster that inspection regime to make sure they can never have a nuclear weapon. And finally, we continue to make progress on these technical negotiations. We left a lot of our team, the Iranians left a lot of their team at the resort there to keep on working at it. So all in all, a very productive 36 hours. We're going to have to keep working it. The last point that I'll make is, as I told you all this morning, this is laying a foundation for what could be a truly transformed Middle East. But we haven't built the house yet. We're going to have to keep on building, and that's what we'll do.
What's different this time, Matt, than the JCPOA, where they also allowed inspectors to come in, but they probably never inspected anything? Is this any different from the Iranians than the last 10 years?
We have to pass the deal so you can find out what it's.
Oh, great. Yeah. No thanks. Yeah. Let's talk about southern Lebanon, though, because you brought it up and I wanted to talk about it. And that's Resolution 1701. Are you familiar with that? United Nations Resolution 1701?
I will be within the next 30 seconds.
Well, I'm going to catch you up. It happened in 2006. The United Nations did this resolution, which was to put an end to the war that was going on between Lebanon and Israel at that time. And what they said was no one could occupy the area between the Litani River going south to the Israeli border. And unfortunately, Hezbollah never left. They have been there the entire time. The United Nations didn't enforce it. And now Israel is also in that area. The only people that are supposed to be there would be the Lebanon military and United Nations forces. Neither of those are there right now. It happens to be Hezbollah and Lebanon. Hezbollah controls that. It's almost a state within the state, south of the Litani River down to Israel border. So that kind of backs up what you were saying earlier, that maybe the Israel government maybe want to throw a monkey wrench into what's going on with America. But that's 1701, Resolution 1701. And again, it's 20 years old. But the United Nations really has never done anything about it because Hezbollah has been there the whole time. And by the way, Hezbollah has their government headquarters actually in the southern part of Beirut, not down in that area. of the Litani River. Do you have anything you want to add there, Matt?
Well, I do think it is a good thing, all the progress they have made in fighting Hezbollah. Although I will sort of echo Trump in saying that, there are, I think, legitimate concerns with proportionality in that, obviously Israel had, this is obviously going to Gaza, but, they absolutely had a right to respond to Hamas's terror attack on October 7th. And I think a moral imperative to, is 80,000 casualties the correct number in response to, I think it was under 2,000 in that one? I mean, honestly, probably not. And I don't, I've just seen a lot of videos of entire buildings getting demolished in Lebanon to get one person or two people allegedly that are part of Hezbollah. I don't, I guess it's probably easy to Monday morning quarterback in war, and I'm not an expert on it, but it is. I do have some of those concerns that Trump was citing as well there.
Yeah, well, October 8th, right after October 7th, when Hamas went into Israel, Hezbollah started bombing Israel, and they've not stopped since. I would look at this maybe in a different way, thinking, well, maybe if Israel would just not retaliate, and we could get a nuclear deal done that actually is better for Israel in the long run. So are they cutting off their nose to spite their face?
Yeah, I mean, you'll remember during when we struck Iran last year and then, had our little peace deal. Yeah. I mean, we struck a peace deal with them, or a ceasefire. Israel was bombing into the deadline after the ceasefire was struck. And it's like, just listen, do what you need to do, but I don't know. There needs to, I hate to say there needs to be some sportsmanship in war, but it's one of those things that you're just, I don't know. You need to know when to have a little bit of restraint.
Yeah. And the other part of this, Matt, too, when you think about it, Iran controls Hezbollah. Mm-hmm. So if they want to say this is over because the United States is not doing what they're supposed to do in this memorandum of understanding, all they have to do is tell Hezbollah, bomb Israel. And then Israel, bombs them back, and that does away with the ceasefire between those two, which is part of the MOU. Yep. So, Iran can do that. And when they do, then that's going to mess things up in this. Let's move on to DNI, Tulsi Gabbard. She had her last day last week. And, there's been a lot of conversation about COVID origins from the very beginning. I don't know where you were on the beginning, but at the very beginning, I was pretty much, well, I wouldn't say from the very beginning, but soon thereafter, it wasn't a bat soup from a Wuhan market for me.
I trusted the experts for about a week. So I was like, oh wait, these people, how they'll say stuff where I'm like, how could you possibly the virus got here last Wednesday and you just know all this stuff all of a sudden? I don't buy it.
Well, when they were making it, maybe they knew.
Well, that actually explains it then.
Yeah, right. Well, let's go to her. Tulsi Gabbard, here on her last day in office, she released information on COVID origins.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives.
Now, Matt, that was not supposed to be happening. There was a moratorium that President Obama put on that would end gain-of-function research. And we know that, Fauci went around those things. He used Peter Daszak in North Carolina to do the gain-of-function, and he did some funny things. And you always wondered during COVID, was this Fauci that created it, or was this Fauci that made a mistake and now he's trying to cover it up? And at this point, I think I go with the latter. I think that he was trying to cover it up the whole time. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, the intel, I can't remember if it was FBI or CAA, one of the intel agencies, had has accepted the lab leak theory as the official theory. They said it was with low confidence, but it is still the dominant theory. And I think it was Josh Hawley, and it might have even been Trump himself, were some of the first people to float the lab leak theory. And the media in unison attacked them. And when Fauci was asked about this, I recall that he had very detailed scientific reasons for why the evidence did not fit a lab leak, meaning he didn't frame it as, well, it's a possibility, we'll see. It was very definitive early on without any further research of, no, it was definitely not a lab leak, which leads you to ask the question of why not be open-minded? If we're supposed to follow the science, you should at least seriously look into that theory. And it was something he denied time and time again. I think he probably did during those famous exchanges with Rand Paul. And if he had something to hide, that is the perfect reason for why he did that. It seems like that was the case.
Well, back then when it was going on, we were all suppressed. We know from the Twitter files that came out at the end of 2022 that big tech was working with the White House and they were suppressing information. If you remember, Donald Trump couldn't even say China.
Yeah.
They didn't want you to say China because they were protecting the Wuhan lab so much. And that is, to me, exactly what happened. And I dug into some archives of the radio show. I went all the way back over 3 years ago because there were a couple of hearings back then that I want to dig into now to put together with what she released. Because when you listen to Dr. Robert Redfield here in just a minute, you're going to understand that there was something that happened in that lab in September of 2019. And Fauci, way back then, was saying, no, it wasn't September. It didn't happen then. There was no lab leak. It was bat soup from the Wuhan market. That's where we got this. And in reality, it wasn't. There were so many different theories going on. We were suppressed. We were censored. And unfortunately, Matt, as you look at this, we have CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, all the mainstream media has done zero coverage of this, which is 62% of the people in the country get their news from there. So does it even matter in the end that the truth is that it came from the lab? And, that's the unfortunate thing with so many things right now in our society, whether it's J6 or election fraud or whatever it is, if the mainstream media doesn't cover it. And because of that, it's like it didn't happen to the majority of the country.
Well, the truth always matters just for the sake of knowing the truth. But does it matter in terms of political consequences? And the answer is no. Fauci got that pardon for a reason. I don't think it was just because they thought they would punish him with the process. I think it's because they thought he actually would be found guilty of something, or something would be at least uncovered while investigating him. So, I think so.
Well, let's go to this tape here. This is Robert Redfield. I had to dig back to April of 2023. This hearing was in March of 2023. That long ago is when this hearing was. So here is that audio clip with a picture of Dr. Robert Redfield.
Go back and look. It's declassified now, and I'm sure you all have your classified briefings, but the declassified information now, in September of 2019, three things happened in that lab. One is they deleted the sequences. It was highly irregular. So researchers don't usually like to do that. Second thing they did was they changed the command and control of the lab from the civilian control to the military control. Highly unusual. And I've been involved in dual-use labs when I was in the military. And the third things they did, which I think is really telling, is they let a contractor redo the ventilation system in that laboratory. So I think clearly there was strong evidence that there was a significant event that happened in that laboratory in September. It's now been declassified.
It was declassified back in 2023. He brought that information. Very few people heard about it or knew about it. I happened to be watching that congressional hearing, and I played that on my radio show. But, that's what happened. It was a lab leak. And, he mentioned there that the genetic sequencing, scientists that spend their whole life working on these things, they don't suddenly just lose all of the genetic sequencing, and that happened. And then the army of China, they came in and overtook that lab, took control of it. And then the last thing you heard him say was the air filtration system was changed suddenly in September 2019. Meanwhile, all of us were told we can't say China, and none of it was true. And it was. Then I asked the question, should we look for reparations from China? We had 1.2 million Americans that died. I think There were 7 million worldwide that died from COVID. China needs to pay.
I believe there was someone who did sue over something COVID related and got a large settlement or victory because China just didn't show up to court. And I think the way we can collect is by federal assets they own. So when they're buying up farmland, if we sue China over COVID, and it seems like they're just not going to show up for court, we win by default. You can then seize the land. So maybe you and I, this could be our side hustle, is suing China over this. But with the land,
like a class action suit to me. Have you ever joined one of those? I've joined some.
Oh, I'm up like $80. Yeah.
They $5 or $6 every time.
There's
for 3 years.
There's a joke that if you're going to pick a bank to join, you join Wells Fargo because they break the law so often. You get like $20 a quarter just from class action law. You get paid to bank there. But with the lab lake theory, it is the most simplest common sense explanation in that you have the coronavirus factory right here, and then there's a coronavirus outbreak across the street. Like, I know I'm ripping off Jon Stewart, but he's like, hey, suppose there's an outbreak of chocolatey goodness in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Where do we suspect that came from? Maybe it's the chocolate factory. It's a perfect analogy for this.
I want to play one more clip. Again, I dug into the archives. This was on that same show back in 2023. Jim Jordan was questioning the science editor of the New York Times about a couple of doctors that completely changed the narrative. Let's listen to this clip together.
Mr. Wade, why would they change their position that fast when the only intervening event is a conference call with Dr. Fauci, the guy who wouldn't let Dr. Redfield see the very emails that they had sent him? Dr. Redfield, head of CDC on the coronavirus task force. Why would they change their position, Dr. Wade, or Mr. Wade?
Well, this question does lie at the heart of the issue. What is pertinent, it seems to me, is there's no new scientific evidence that we can see that became available between these dates, the January 31st and Feb 4.
Right, there's no new, I think you're, go ahead.
So you have to ask if there were other kinds of influence available. Now, it is true that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Farry in London were very powerful research officials, and between them they controlled...
I read your testimony, I saw that. Yeah.
So...
Why don't you cut to the chase and tell them what you really think was the reason?
I don't know what the reason was.
I know what it was. Go ahead. I'll let you say it, because I read your testimony. I think you said it in your testimony, too. Maybe you're reluctant to say it here, but go ahead.
Well, if you're looking at the timeline, on May 21st, just a few weeks after the Nature Medicine article had come out, two of the signatories of the original email to Dr. Fauci, that's Dr. Anderson and Dr. Gary, were awarded a $9 million grant for them.
So there's 9 million reasons to change their mind. I knew you'd get to it. I read that last night. So 3 days after they say it came from a lab, they changed their position, and the only intervening event's a conference call with Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins. Again, a call that Mr. Redfield was not allowed to be on, the head of CDC and on the coronavirus task force.
Robert Redfield. You had the scarf lady, Dr. Birx, and you had obviously Fauci. Those two pushed Redfield out early on during COVID, and you heard there with Jim Jordan that he wasn't even involved with that phone call that Fauci had that got these two scientists that are world renowned and respected, got them to change their opinion on where this came from. Now, a couple of months later, 3 or 4 months later, this came out in the DNI report. They changed their mind also, but it was too late. The narrative had already been started. It was way down the road, and there was nothing that could be done, and we were lied to again.
Well, I mean, a memo, I don't know if you heard, I don't know if my mic was on when I said it. I said the guy sounded like it was RFK Jr. talking. He sounded like he was dying during the testimony, unfortunately. But no, a memo clearly went out. And it probably was from the White House itself. I mean, we know, as you were saying, they were dictating Twitter policy. They were communicating with Twitter on, hey, ban this guy for questioning the vaccine or X, Y, and Z. And they were obliging. So, I mean, if you look up the lab leak theory on PolitiFact, factcheck.org, all the big fact checkers, they all dismissed it as a crazy conspiracy theory. And as the fact checkers are often in need of a fact checking themselves.
And yet they're still there. The debunking on Google, if you Google it, it'll still say that it was debunked. And, when you watch the mainstream media, you're not seeing any of these stories. And then if someone says something to you, you or I go up to somebody and say, well, that it came from a lab. And they'll look at us like we, have horns.
It's because liberals, to I think an overwhelmingly larger degree, do appeal to authority and respect perceived authority more than the right. So if you and I are going to debunk something, we'll walk you through why something is not true. And someone who agrees with us, if they're trying to convince someone, will explain that whole process. On the left, you can just brand something debunked, and that's all it takes.
Yeah.
You just go, oh, no, it's been debunked. Didn't you hear?
Well, and, I think conservatives also are very skeptical, and they want the proof. They want to see it. They want it to make sense. And like you said, the liberals, they're sheep. They just follow along. Whatever is said, that's what we go with.
We're used to being lied to. There was a professional poker player I followed, Dan Negreanu, and he, I guess, I don't know what his political orientation is, but I think he was at least center left. And this was 1 or 2 years ago. He learned for the first time about the so-called Charlottesville hoax that Trump claimed neo-Nazis are fine people, which was out of context. But he just in the past couple of years learned that was a lie, and then sent him on this whole rabbit hole of, wait a second, what else are they lying to us about? And for us, that's just the past few decades of our lives, is seeing some big headline thing and then immediately being disproven, and then us knowing and the left never realizing. But that's pretty much every single anti-Trump bombshell the first administration was in this category where you and I would go, all right, let's wait a day or two and see what the truth is. And what do you know? It was nothing. The left never really catches up with that.
No. Let's go to one more clip. Here's Anthony Fauci recently in a hearing. I think this was about 5, 6, 7 months ago. Here's Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Prior to that call would have been on the call.
Well, the call was arranged by Jeremy Farrar. You should ask him.
Okay. Did U.S. tax dollars flow through a grant recipient to the lab in China?
I'm sorry, what was...
Did U.S. tax dollars flow through a grant recipient to the lab in China?
Yes, of course. It was a sub-award to the Wuhan Institute.
And who approved that award?
Excuse me?
And who approved that award? What agency approved that award?
National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
Your agency approved that, right?
Yes, it did after...
Did that have anything to do with this downplaying of the lab leak theory?
No.
Nothing to do with it?
Nothing.
What...
I think it probably does, man. I think it has everything to do with it.
This obvious conflict of interest explain me lying? No.
Unfortunately, one, Fauci was pardoned, so that's one thing. The other thing is statute of limitations recently ran out. I saw Catherine Herridge, formerly of CBS and also Fox, say that there's a possibility of a conspiracy, but that's never going to be proven. And so I think you kind of have to close the book here on Anthony Fauci and COVID and everything.
And presumably you're getting a DC jury and a not statistically a not minor percentage of the population viewed Fauci as the second coming of Christ.
Right.
Did you see that they would make Fauci candles where instead of Jesus it would be him in religious clothes? It was I mean blasphemous, obviously. But no, a lot of just insane people live there, and we have seen under Trump's DOJ a lot of people who are obviously breaking the law are getting off on jury nullification grounds. And that if you're in a city where 80 or 90% of the public voted against Trump, if they see something as politically motivated, they're just going to strike it down, even knowing it's wrong.
I know you were out of town this weekend. Did you happen to see any of the Supreme Court decisions that came out recently? We had the Second Amendment, big unanimous case. It was 9-0. Yeah. And that had to do with gun rights and marijuana use. And you can't take away someone's right to have a gun. And that was a huge decision. And it was 9-0, which, by the way, 9-0 decisions are not the majority, but it is the largest percentage. Yeah. 37%.
I had always wondered that, because I remember thinking well, if these are the wisest legal minds on earth, why isn't every decision 9-0? But it is. I remember looking it up. It is the most common decision, and that even in the Senate, I think 100-0 votes or voice votes are extremely common, and that such a large percentage of government business is just this mundane, non-controversial stuff. But as to the point of that ruling, I mean, I largely agree with it. Even though marijuana is still illegally federally, if you were going to, rank drugs in a hierarchy of bad, as someone who thinks that sort of the normalization of marijuana has had consequences and that people increasingly believe the drug has no consequences. That being said, I think alcohol is far worse. And if you're allowed to drink alcohol and have a gun, I would say if you can have a lesser drug, you should also be able to own a gun. And
all 9 agreed with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good for even Ketanji Brown Jackson saw some Palumbo wisdom. Thank God. Finally.
Well, I would never admit that.
I take it back.
The lower courts, they also, you remember how they were doing all of the blanket injunctions at the beginning of the Trump administration? They can't do that. That was another decision that came down over the weekend or just prior to the weekend. It was a 5-4 decision, much closer, but it doesn't matter as long as it's 5-4. And what they are saying, if you want to explain it, you may explain it better than I do, but they are saying that if a regional or local court decides, okay, you can't do this, they can't do it for the entire nation. It has to be according to the person that brings the case that has been harmed. They can answer for them, but not for the entire country, which was happening almost on everything at the beginning of Donald Trump's second term.
Well, yes. I mean, it should apply to the jurisdiction that it gives judges far too much power if they can just block a policy that is objected to locally and apply it nationally. You could completely obstruct the president's agenda. And I understand, obviously, part of the judiciary's job is to hold the president in check. But we do know that the higher the court that these rulings get appealed to, the more they go in Trump's favor. So, and when it gets to the Supreme Court, it's like 80 or 90% in Trump's favor. So, it just proves that the injunctions were politically motivated to begin with. And it's a rotating cast of characters. In fact, a lot of the time, the headline is like, Trump rules cancer illegal, judge blocks it. It's some Star Wars named judge we've seen 800 times before, or Boasberg, their household Chukin or whatever the hell that one's name was, but they're all household names by now, which is very rare for judges.
Judges shouldn't be known like that. I would think that they shouldn't be rock stars.
No,
they should just be judging things. Everybody shouldn't know Boasberg's name, but they do. And the Democrats keep running to his court to get rulings. Maybe this will help. That will keep injunctions from going across the entire nation. Did you happen to see Donald Trump's post over the weekend about great daughter? Did you see that?
Who is that talking about? It was my question. Whose daughter? Why is she great?
It was the guy who owns ABC Radio in New York and the grocery chain. It was
Nisa, whatever his name is. I know the guy. Yes, he's on Fox, and
he is good guy, great guy, and it was his wife. I guess it came Camp David 30 years ago, but you
thought it was the daughter.
No one knew, and what everybody was talking about on social media, there were some really funny comments about it, but that's who it turned out to be. And I guess their daughter is head of the GOP in New York, in Manhattan.
I knew that, yeah.
And so he must have met with her, but it was just so obscure, almost like the aliens last weekend.
Oh yeah,
it didn't have anything to do with. We also have Kamala Harris. She is right there at about 9%, I think, on Polymarket for being the Democrat presidential nominee in 28. Gavin Newsom is up there, 28%, I forget. I looked today, but I don't remember which one it was. He's the leader. But then you have Kamala Harris, and you remember her passage of time speech. She's very
it's a lot of significance. A lot of significance to the passage.
Significance to the passage of time kept going. Well, she was on with Don Lemon. I have the video here. She is with Don Lemon. Again, she's getting to time.
I really, truly believe this. We each have light inside of us. And we need to know that is what inspires our hope as much as anything external to ourselves. And when we feel that and not allow an election or an individual to dampen that light, and instead let that light kind of carry us, in particular through moments of darkness, that we not only act on that hope, but we inspire that hope in each other. And in particular at this moment, it is so important that we not only have hope, but that we understand that that should be a verb.
Do you know what in the hell she's talking about?
No. She must be so much fun to have as like a drunk aunt. But
I think
I would honestly, like, I'm not even joking here. Like, to have her at the Thanksgiving table would be so much fun. I don't want her in charge of anything ever that impacts my life, but just listening to her ramble like 2 or 3 drinks in would be so much fun.
Well, she's something else. And again, she's not leading. Hopefully her career is over.
Yeah.
I don't know what else she could do. Do you have any ideas there?
I guess governor of California is gone.
Yeah. Some people said that she was going to try that, but
she just become a grifter at this point. I mean,
hasn't she always been? Honestly, has Kamala Harris been anything other than a grifter her entire career?
Well, I just mean like the part where you're selling like VPN subscriptions or something, full in.
All the way back to her history as Attorney General in California.
By the way, I'm not ruling out as a potential advertiser for this show, but if she starts doing it, it's bad.
Yeah, we need all we can get there. By the way,
really,
let's tell everybody where they can follow us. I didn't do that at the beginning of the hour, but you can follow us on Rumble and on YouTube, and that is Palumbo Booker Justified, either one of those. You can also watch us live if you happen to be live now on WD Americans Facebook. They have about 3.5 million followers. Great to have you there. We are checking comments there, and also on talkred.com, and also on their live feed on Getter. Any of those places you can find us, but please follow us. And also I've made a Twitter, an X, PB&J podcast. I think it's Booker Scott Show is what it's under. So please follow us, and you can get the shorts on Instagram and things like that. But
we assigned my wife the duty of clipping the show, so she's doing good. I'm seeing
on TikTok.
TikTok. I'm seeing on the YouTube that you're doing. We are getting comments from people who disagree with us, so it is breaking containment. Like, we are, the show is reaching, outside our audience, which is good, even though they're not pleased with us. But
thank you very much for watching and making the comments too. We had an interesting comment last week on someone that disagreed. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll get to it. But let's move on here to Sheldon Whitehouse. You know him. He is the Democrat senator from Rhode Island, I believe, and he's the guy that was complaining about racism, and it turns out he is a member of a all-white swim and yacht club.
Well, to be fair to him, if it's all white, there's no one to be racist against.
Well,
so
I don't know. I don't know who they have working there, but
good point.
Yeah. But everybody got on his case pretty hard. And Matt, something we've talked about on the radio show is if the Republicans don't maintain power in the House of Representatives, which if you look at Polly Market or Cauchy, any of those, it's 80 or 90% that the Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries will take over the House of Representatives. And depending on what happens, and I've talked about this on the radio show quite a bit, I don't know that I've done it here on this show yet, but if the Republicans don't pass a reconciliation with all 12 appropriations before September 30th coming up this year, just a few months from now, then the government's going to shut down October 1st. The Democrats, they want it to shut down because that will destroy the midterm.
Helped them last time quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, and just normally, historically, you're looking at losing 25 seats, which would give Democrats the power. If that were to happen, you almost could look at something like Barack Obama in 2010, and I don't want that to happen. I want people to go out and vote. If the Republicans will go out and vote, we can maybe keep the House. I think we'll keep the Senate. We talked about that last
Senate,
week.
I think, is safe because, I mean, even like in Michigan, I mean, they're running like an Islamist adjacent guy against, is it Mike Rogers? I think is the nominee there.
Mike Rogers, yeah.
Yes, and Rogers lost to Slotkin last
18,000 votes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was by a margin by which he lost because there were Trump supporters who just left the Senate vote blank. And I think Slotkin underperformed Harris by like 19,000 or 20,000. Rogers underperformed by 120,000. So the entire margin was just Trump voters not voting for him. So hopefully this time around they wise up a little bit.
Georgia could be an interesting race too with John Ossoff. We'll have to wait and see. The way things were May 19th in that primary, it's going to be tough unless the Republicans decide to get out and vote. But what I want to get to with Sheldon Whitehouse here, I think the seditious six, that was set up in a way to create an impeachment or investigations because they said do not follow illegal orders. So I think that could be an investigation if the Democrats take over the House that we could see. And Venezuela would be another one. They could say that was an illegal order. And we had the admiral, I don't know if you remember this, but there was an admiral that left right before the Venezuela execution of that operation took place. And he was over that part of the country or that part of the world for the Navy. He was an admiral and he left. And since then, he has met with Democrats in the House of Representatives and the Senate. So is he setting up to be the next Alexander Vindman in an upcoming? So that's the way my mind works. I look at this and think, well, what could they be up to? Because as soon as they take over the House, they're going to start investigations and it will move quickly to impeachments, unfortunately. But here's Sheldon Whitehouse. This has to do with the $1.8 or $1.776 billion slush fund that Todd Blanche, the AG, said, we're not going to do this anymore when he was questioned a couple of weeks ago. Now, let me explain where this money comes from, because I don't think a lot of people understand. There was a $10 billion lawsuit that Donald Trump had against the IRS. The IRS agreed to settle out of court. Now, this is Donald Trump's IRS. This is Donald Trump's DOJ. And the DOJ decided they were going to spend the $1.8 billion, and then they backed up and said, we're not. So this is Donald Trump's winning earnings from the IRS agreeing to settle out of court on the $10 billion, which that had to do with someone in the IRS, if you remember back years ago, releasing tax. Yeah, they did it on family members and Donald Trump. So he sued, and that's where that money came from. So let's listen to Sheldon Whitehouse here and hear how far-fetched he is. But this is another road that the Democrats could go down should they win the House of Representatives to start investigating and ultimately trying to impeach Donald Trump.
Last night, the federal court in Florida that is inquiring into whether the Trump slush fund settlement amounted to a fraud on the court got its reply from the 35 retired federal judges who originally brought the challenge. And the reply is a boomer. It pretty much destroys the Trump lawyers' arguments, but more interesting, it lays out all of the various methods and remedies available to the court to investigate and respond to a fraud upon the court.
So he says it's a fraud upon the court. And again, that's Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat senator who, he's not my favorite guy, but I just throw this out here to, have it on your radar. Understand that this could be another way that the Democrats try to impeach or investigate Donald Trump and the Trump family. They've been doing it for 10 years. Do you think they're going to stop?
No, I mean, I think they have infinity reasons to impeach Trump, and that, the Russia hoax was sort of the OG anti-Trump hoax that was not, impeachment worthy, or they didn't try to impeach over that, but it was a hoax that was completely hallucinated, and it was the subject of tens of thousands of hours of media attention, tens of thousands of hours, their entire podcast devoted to it, out of absolutely nothing. So yeah, they can really turn anything into something they think is going to eventually be impeachment worthy. More relevantly, the first impeachment over Trump allegedly withholding aid to Ukraine as part of a quid pro quo. Zelensky himself spoke out and said there was no quid pro quo before there was the impeachment. So the guy who was supposedly a party there or pressured by Trump came out and said, no, I was not. And that didn't matter. I don't think that really came up in the trial. So they'll really try anything.
Luigi Mangini. What about this
Mangione.
guy? What's his name?
Mangione, I think.
Mangione. Is that the way
Yeah.
you say it?
That's how I say it over
Do you
here.
remember Chuck Mangione?
No, maybe that's where I'm getting it from. No, I don't remember him.
I don't know. What is his name? Mangione, I believe.
Mangione?
Yeah, it's got an I at the end. It's Italian, right? Aren't you? You should know this.
Allegedly.
You don't even know. Anyway, this is the guy that killed the CEO of a healthcare company, and he's become famous. And all of these women want to marry this guy. It's odd to me.
He's famous because women find him attractive, and they're the people who were saying, "Oh, he's this hero who killed a guy who's killing people." But
Brian Thompson was his name. Brian Thompson.
But they're coming up with the excuse after the fact, and that the guy who killed Charlie Kirk, I guess I have to say allegedly, the alleged Charlie Kirk assassin, he killed someone that millions of people hated, and given the response to his murder, I guess a lot of people wanted dead because they can't tolerate disagreement. And there's not a single woman who's like, "Oh, I'd love to be with that guy." He has not developed a fan base at all, despite what he did being popular among the left. And it's got to be extremely frustrating to him to see one murderer get treated like he's a sex symbol, that he's just chopped liver.
So, I guess he overruled his attorney, though. Is that right?
So yes. So to give some background, man, his attorneys floated the defense of
insanity.
Yeah. The problem of which being, you are admitting, well, he did do it, but now we're trying to get a mitigating factor here. And listen, given the response to this assassination, I would not be surprised if they could find one juror who's going to try to nullify the whole thing. I mean, granted, there was going to be a federal trial. He would probably be retried at the state level anyway. But I actually wouldn't be surprised if there was a mistrial, which is depressing to say, but there are enough depraved people to make that possible. But anyway, they did withdraw that plea. So I guess the defense is like, okay, he did do it, but he was crazy. Just kidding. Actually, he didn't do it. Let's go back to this option. Wait, and also one last point. His followers are also doing this two-faced argument where it's like he's a hero who killed a tyrant. Also, he's innocent. He's framed.
Yeah.
So
well, they're nut jobs. I mean, they want to marry the guy. Yeah. The guy killed him, murdered Brian Thompson in cold blood. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. I'm not going to say alleged. It happened.
I mean, we have this manifesto, the bullet casings match. I think it's pretty obvious. Yeah.
I don't need to be Columbo to figure this one out. It's pretty simple. Do you remember Columbo, by the way? Do you remember that show?
Just got one question for you.
Yeah.
Yes. Was I quoting the show there? I've seen like one scene from.
I don't think so.
No, I thought that's what he did. He'd be like,
no, he always put his hand on his head and said, "Oh, by the way." And as he was walking,
what I was probably trying to quote.
It was really close. It was close.
Oh, thank you. Every teacher I had growing up would call me Columbo, so I at one point looked it up on YouTube, but I saw a clip.
It's been a while then.
It's been a while.
What about June? How is your Pride Month going? You having a good Pride Month?
I'm not celebrating.
You're not celebrating.
Not celebrating. Not practicing. Obviously,
Major League Baseball had a story, and you had some baseball players that didn't want to wear the rainbow hats, and the San Francisco Giants were involved with that. Even the Tampa Bay Rays here, where I am, they had the same issue. And let's go to this. Let's go to this clip and get a little background on it, and then we'll talk about it.
J.T. Brubaker and Ryan Walker was seen with the biblical verse, Genesis 9:12-16, written on their rainbow pride caps, which says the rainbow is a symbol of a covenant between God and all living creatures.
They defaced the pride rainbow with a Bible verse telling the LGBT community that they do not own the rainbow, that God owns the rainbow.
Sid Ziegler, co-founder of Outsports, calls the Pride Night display disgraceful.
If I were a Giants fan, I would never attend a game again.
In a statement, the Giants organization telling ABC7 Eyewitness News, the San Francisco Giants are proud to support Pride Night and the LGBTQ plus community. We also respect that individuals may make personal choices about participating in team activations. We understand.
And you see that picture there of the Florida Attorney General James Uthmeyer. He has sued Major League Baseball over this. And on Monday afternoon, Major League Baseball walked it back, and they're not going to get these players in trouble for what they did. I just wish all of it would go away. Just put on a baseball uniform.
Yeah.
You know, same thing with what's his face, Colin Kaepernick years ago.
Oh yeah,
and the NFL got ridiculous putting stuff on their helmets. Just keep it all out of sports. Keep it all out of entertainment. Leave us alone. Let's just go about our lives.
What was the San Francisco team name again? Was it?
They're the Giants.
Giants. Okay, so the guy.
For those of you watching that don't know, Matt knows nothing about any sports.
I forgot the team name for 15 seconds ago, which is where I'm at. But the guy who I guess has never been to a Giants game was saying, well, if I did go to Giants games, I wouldn't. So I'm going to start. I'm going to start boycotting Rolex. I've never bought one, but I'm never spending 50 grand on a watch ever again. I don't know. It's just a bizarre argument to make. Also, his claim saying we don't own he thinks gay people don't own the rainbow. How do you own a rainbow? If anyone's going to own a rainbow, it's got to be God. I don't see how you could have rainbow ownership.
Yeah, well, it seems like Pride Month is not what it used to be, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I hate the rhetoric, the cliches of like love is love. You don't get to define words with words. Like houses are houses, couches are couches. It tells me nothing. And also, like
I learned that in the third grade.
Yeah, non-gay people are also capable of love. So what do we? I don't know. I quote. I like the JD Vance quote. Trump's president. We don't do this anymore. Good enough.
Oh, it's been much quieter this year for Pride Month. That's a good thing. We have one more here before we get to the end of the program, and this is Keith Ellison. He is the Attorney General in Minnesota, and this is about the fraud, and he's being questioned by a reporter. Let's go to this clip.
You look at, if you ask the newspapers for a forensic accounting, the number you mentioned is tightly identified with people of a very unique political persuasion aligned with the Trump administration. So I'm done talking to you. Bye-bye.
No, I just wanted you to clear up the number. I'm not quoting. I'm quoting several reports.
I get it. It's wrong though. And if you're a real reporter, you should know that.
I will report that you're saying it's wrong.
And he stormed off, and he's talking about the Somalians and the fraud in Minnesota.
Yeah, he was. We didn't see it in the clip, but the reporter was quoting the $9 billion fraud statistic. And ultimately, we don't actually know what the total is because there's undiscovered fraud and all that. But I hate to be Keith Ellison's PR guy, but this is how you handle the situation. You go, yeah, the 90 billion figure has been getting a lot of play, but it's important to understand it's actually just an estimate some random guy came up with. Our internal estimates actually show it's far smaller. It's actually blah, blah, blah billion. Now, the problem with that is going, actually it's only 5 billion. You still look like an asshole. But I assume that's why he wouldn't answer the question, because their internal numbers are probably lower than the 9 billion. And I think you and I had even...
We talked about it.
I've spoken about how the 9 billion is probably an extrapolation or artificially a high number, but
let me tell you where that number came from.
It is in the billions for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me tell you where that number came from. The U.S. attorney there in Minnesota, when all of this started, there was $18 billion that was appropriated to Minnesota for these programs over a 4-year period of time. And the U.S. attorney at that time said there may be as much as possibly half of that number could be fraud. Mm-hmm. So that's where the $9 billion came up with. And everybody ran with $9 billion. Like you said, nobody really knows. It really doesn't matter whether it's $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion, or $4 billion. It's a lot of money.
It's got to be millions. Right. I mean, Nick Shirley in like 5 minutes can uncover 100 million on a single block. So I'm going to go ahead and say, what is the ratio of real daycares to fake daycares there? And that I would assume, I would not be surprised if there's more fake ones at this point. But I don't want to assume, I guess.
What do we look for this week, Matt? Anything on your radar this week? I know SCOTUS is going to have some more decisions, so we'll keep looking for birthright citizenship.
That's what we're waiting on. Unfortunately, it's not looking great just based on, it seems like they're going to roll with precedent, even though we think the precedent is wrong.
Yeah.
Which I don't really get that. But and also the betting markets are overwhelmingly saying it's going to get upheld, which is listen, it's a horrible thing. I mean, even if it was struck down, I mean, I guess they're not going to retroactively remove citizenship, which is a disappointment, and the process is quite laborious. But they could have at least nipped it in the bud. Seems like that's not going to happen. Iran, the details of the deal. Hopefully we'll actually get some real details. Hopefully they'll be good. And
I don't think we're going to get a lot of details on
I don't either, but I'm holding out hope.
The clock just started on 60 days. I think that, like I said earlier in this hour, it's going to be like a carrot dangling out in front of the Iranians, and they're going to accomplish something to get something. You know, they're releasing money. Scott Bessent on Monday, he said, okay, you can sell oil now on the open market, which will help the Iranian people who are dealing with over 100% inflation. They can sell oil to everybody but Cuba, North Korea, and the Crimea region.
Oh,
everybody
Cuba. Cuba's, they just voted their communist legislature unanimously to, it was like it's like 170 or so, I believe, free market type reforms. And this is obviously in response to Trump putting all this pressure on them. But it is, you know, a sort of Berlin Wall moment for Trump, if you will, without any real uprising. It was something they forced the government to do on their own. And it's things like allowing foreign investment, allowing people, like allowing for the future privatization of real estate, of state-owned real estate, allowing for private banks. They have currently very, very micro capitalism in Cuba, and that you can own a business, but you can only have one. You can't have a franchise. You can't have multiple stores, even under a different brand. You can only have certain numbers of employees, and they're going to deal with those regulations. So I think the beginning is something really, really good in Cuba, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of progress on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis there.
Ultimately, with Iran, I think there has to be regime change. And I've been consistent. I've said that since the beginning. I don't know how it happens. I know it has to happen from within. But until we get that, I'm not sure that anything that Iran says or signs on a piece of paper really means much of anything.
Nope.
But Matt, we are to the end of our time here. Thanks for watching the PB&J podcast. We appreciate it. You can follow us again on Palumbo Booker Justified at Rumble and YouTube. And if you've been watching on WD Americans Facebook Live, thank you. Or if you're watching on talkred.com, thank you for doing that. Matt, we'll do it again next week. What do you say?
Sounds good to me.